USC women's basketball has another crosstown showdown on tap. USC baseball has a big weekend ahead, and Jack Callanan finally gets to talk about soccer. All of that and more coming right up. It's the Water Cooler. Where else would you rather be? Good morning and welcome to the Water Cooler, your home for USC sports banter. I'm your host, Thomas Johnson, joined alongside MJ Newsom and Stefano Fendrich. We're hitting 3 sports in our first segment today, so let's get right into it with Water Cooler Talk. USC women's basketball is getting ready for another rivalry game, this time for all the marbles. That's what we're getting this weekend as USC is facing off against UCLA on the road tomorrow to decide the regular season winner of the Big Ten. USC, of course, won the first matchup this season against the Bruins. What are the keys for the Trojans to take home the win, and what does UCLA have to do to get the Big Ten?
Well, before I get into the keys, I just want to wish you a happy birthday, Thomas.
You're a nice
we
guy,
love you,
Stefano.
man. But now back to the important stuff. I think for both teams, the key to the game is JuJu. Can JuJu have a good game? If I'm UCLA, I'm sending 2, 3 defenders in her way, make anyone else beat you. For USC, the key is going to be if JuJu is having a bad game, even if she's having a pretty good game, can someone else step up? You know, in her last 10 games, she shot over 40% just twice. So she's not really in her groove, but as we saw in the last game, you know, she can go for 38 on any given night. But, you know, she had one of maybe the best college basketball performances I've ever seen, and at the end of the day, it was a close game for the majority of the game. So USC really, for them to win, needs to find someone else to step up.
Well, I just feel like JuJu Watkins in every single big game, against every single big team, she finds a way. We saw that in her collegiate debut against Ohio State, a ranked team, over 30 points her freshman year. I just feel like she finds a way.
She does find a way, but, you know, think about to the Pac-12 championship game last year. What did she score, like 7 points, made like 3 field goals? And who stepped up? Mackenzie Forbes when it mattered most, and that clinched USC a #1 seed. So you need someone like a Mackenzie Forbes to step up in a big way if JuJu's having a bad game, because if JuJu's having a bad game, she's going to be just shooting everything. And it's just going to lead to empty possessions on empty possessions.
Yeah, I think to go off what you were saying, it's going to start with Watkins for USC and Betts for UCLA.
Yeah.
2 alphas, the offense runs through them. So defensively for both teams, if you can disrupt that flow by shutting down JuJu, shutting down Lauren Betts, that's going to be big. But you mentioned people stepping up. I think London Jones is going to be a huge key in this game for UCLA. Get this stat. Last 3 games against USC, she's 2 of 18 from 3. So she hasn't been playing well, but I have a feeling this is going to be her night. She's all-time leader in 3-pointers made at UCLA. It's just a junior. And I think this is going to be the game that she finally steps up and gets it done. But biggest key offensively for USC, go with JuJu. UCLA go with Betts. Defensively, shut them down.
Well, what's funny is I feel like every single player is the X factor for both teams. I'm going to talk about Rhea Marshall a little bit because we didn't see her play all that well in the first UCLA matchup, and Clarice Akunwafo is kind of the key defender on bigger players. We've seen that throughout the last couple of seasons. But Rhea Marshall, I think, is going to be really important, especially if she can get some semblance of a mid-range going. She can be really important for USC. And I think she's a senior. She's seen this rivalry since she was a freshman. Just getting that rebound, putting it back up. She's going to be a really important player. But let me throw a hypothetical out there for you guys. And I'm not saying I agree with this statement, but could it almost be a good thing if USC loses this game to use it as motivation heading into the Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament?
You know, I've been thinking about that because realistically, all things go well, USC, even if they lose this game, they do control their own destiny. You go 2-1 against UCLA, you're most likely going to get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is their goal. But I do think it's almost important for them to use this game, if they lose, to reevaluate. They've had 3 straight ranked wins, but they haven't been very good. Against Michigan State, against Illinois, they've kind of let that foot off the gas a little bit. Against Illinois, they went nearly 9 straight minutes without a single field goal made. And they're scraping by against these teams, against these teams that just aren't at the upper echelon of teams that they're going to need to beat in March. So I really think it's going to be important to, if you lose this game, to reevaluate and really think, okay, let's lock in, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because you can get away with it against Michigan State and Illinois, but you can't get away with it against UCLA and Texas.
I think it's more important to win this game than lose it, essentially.
Well,
I think that, obviously.
Wow,
I know, okay, that was poorly said.
Okay.
But I think that, a loss, sure, it can help, but I think a win is going to be better in the long run. And I think if you go into UCLA, it's the first time these 2 teams have ever played one another as top 5 opponents, which is crazy. All the meetings they've had, and this is the first time.
That's insane.
But I think if you win this game, I think it's going to show that you can really compete with the best of the best in a tougher environment. And I think that's going to springboard you more than it would if you lost.
I do agree because, sure, USC did beat UCLA at Galen Center. This one happening at Pauley Pavilion. But very rapid fire, I want to hear your score predictions for the game.
I'm going to go UCLA 74, USC 66.
65-57 Bruins.
I also have UCLA winning 71-67. So all pretty similar scores, all picking UCLA to win.
Wow.
Let's see if the Trojans can prove us wrong. But another hot team on campus is USC baseball. The Trojans do have a loss on the season, but have solid wins over UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton. They're competing in the Southern California College Baseball Classic this weekend, with matchups against UConn, Vanderbilt, and UCLA on deck. So the Huskies and Commodores both made the NCAA tournament last year. UConn not doing so well this year. Vanderbilt, a top 25 team. What would wins against one or both of those teams mean for the program?
I really think the big thing is Vandy, because Vandy is one of the best teams in college baseball, and it's who USC used to be. If you beat Vandy, you're really setting yourself up for success the rest of the year. And just thinking about it, obviously, the Big Ten isn't as stacked as some of these other baseball conferences, so getting a win early in the season against Vandy just does wonders for the confidence that the players feel. But even as a fan watching the game, you think, wow, maybe they can actually go far this year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going right to Vanderbilt as well. I think that we were talking before the show about the college teams that have the cachet and the big brands in their sports. Vanderbilt's that team in baseball. And I think, we talk about the SEC, Tennessee, sure, they won the national championship, but it's still Vanderbilt's conference, in my opinion. And beating Vanderbilt really can springboard USC's team this season, because I think getting a win over that caliber of an opponent and that caliber of a conference will build so much confidence.
Well, also, USC has another rivalry matchup this weekend against UCLA at UCLA. Can you almost see the Trojans overlooking that matchup because they have to play Vanderbilt the day before?
To some extent, because I think their main priority is probably going to be against Vanderbilt, first off, because they know UCLA a little better, maybe have that previous scouting on them. But it would be a very interesting situation if they beat Vandy and then go out and lose the next day to UCLA. I don't know if I'm Stankiewicz, you kind of got to go 3-1 this weekend.
I do agree. And Michael Ebner starting in that UCLA game, pitched an inning this past week after dealing with an injury. So we'll see how he does. But the Trojans sit at 7-1 this year after starting last year at 4-12. It's the best start USC has had to a season since 2018. But the Trojans ended that season at 26-28. Funny enough, USC played against a different SEC team after a strong start as the season started to unravel in 2018. Do we think USC can make a regional this year like they did in 2015? Or do we think the season will start to unravel like it did in 2018?
It's a long season. But very promising start, something we haven't seen from USC baseball. It's obviously super early still. There's not as many games. But still important to look at that. 5 players right now are batting over 300. And again, very early, very few games played, but USC hasn't had more than 2 players bat over 300 in a season in the past 8 years. So it's really encouraging to see, at least on the offensive standpoint, having so many different players get involved. And the pitching is a lot stronger than many thought coming into the season after losing a lot of key players. So I really think this could be the year that USC makes a breakthrough. Andy Stankiewicz gets that monkey off his back. I don't know. I'm a believer this year.
Not going to say no, but I do think it's early. And I think if you look at the schedule so far, you sweep George Washington, you go play at Rice. You do have some good midweek wins. UC Irvine, Cal State Fullerton. But I'm just not sure how quality the schedule's been so far, and 7-1 looks good. This week it'll be very telling. I want to go back to the pitching for a second. I think the bullpen pitching is my biggest question mark. And that has been the issue at times for USC in the past under Stankiewicz. And I think, it's super cool. Ethan Hedges having a great season. He's, fourth in home runs in the conference, and he's second in the nation in saves. But how much longer can you keep that up? And that's you got to have somebody you can turn to out of the bullpen to shut things down. You can't rely on a position player to come in when he's been playing another 8 innings to come and do that. So I think bullpen pitching's the key. It's definitely an easier conference in the Pac-12, but it's early. Got to show me some more.
I really do like the starting pitching, though. I mean, Caden Hunter, the Friday night guy, he's a JUCO transfer for USC. He was brought in as the Friday night guy. He's been really impressive so far. Caden Aoki can be a start. I know he dealt with injuries last year, so it's been a little bit rocky for him. I really do think the starting pitching is going to be the key for the Trojans, and we saw in the midweeks, USC has had some strong starting pitching performances. But let's move away from USC and take a look at a new sport. Let's send it over to Jack Hallinan and Dylan Luden to talk some footy.
Dylan and I are joining you from the majestic BMO Stadium to break down the first weekend of MLS action and give you an LA-centric look at the 2025 MLS season. Dylan, the Galaxy lost, LAFC won, but what were your more thematic first impressions of this first weekend?
Well, just judging off these kind of first performances, I think LAFC will kind of pick up right where they left off as, top contenders in the Western Conference. I think they still have a really solid squad to deal with. Meanwhile, for LA Galaxy, it would have been a little bit different if Ricky Puig was on the field and he was healthy. But right now, without him in the lineup, it just seems like a much different team than this team that won the MLS Cup. And of course, we'll go into some of the departures. But without him in the midfield, it just looks like they have kind of lost a creative step, in my opinion.
I completely agree. Watching the game Sunday, Marco Royce is filling in that number 10 role that Ricky Puig is so good at. And even though he's a legend, brings tons of international and European soccer experience, he just looks a little bit off the pace. And maybe he'll grow into the season. He didn't play a ton of minutes at the tail end of last season, so he's got to get a rhythm here. But let's think about those departures for a second. They brought in Christian Ramirez at striker. There's a couple other new additions around the squad. Lucas Sanabria in midfield. Do you think the Galaxy overall took a step back with the roster this summer, or just need to kind of retool and figure out a way forward?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, do you think the Galaxy did take a step back? I mean, I think they're obviously still going to be a playoff team, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think they're going to be, top of the Western Conference like they were last year. And I mean, that's mainly because they lost striker Dejan Joveljic, who had 15 goals last season. He was so crucial in their MLS Cup winning run, and they haven't really found anyone to replace him as an out-and-out striker. I mean, they have two of the best wingers in the league. That's probably one of the best duos in the league. And when Ricky Puig is back in the midfield, him and Royce will be a great combination. But they need someone that can at least put the ball in the back of the net from that striker position.
The Galaxy are going to figure it out as the season goes along. I was really impressed with San Diego, though, and to move a little bit further down the coast in Southern California here, do you think there's an outside shot that San Diego FC, in their first ever MLS season, maybe pips one or two of the LA clubs in the table?
In my opinion, I don't think so, but I do think they can be a playoff team. I just don't think they're going to be above the LA teams just yet.
I agree. They looked really solid, but I think going certainly above LAFC would be a stretch for this season. All right, let's get a final prediction here. LA Galaxy, LAFC, and let's throw in San Diego.
Sure, why not?
Where do you think they finish in the table, and in what order between those three?
I think it'll be LAFC, LA Galaxy, and then San Diego. And I think LAFC will probably finish around second or third. Galaxy, I think, mid-table, and San Diego will take one of the final spots in the MLS playoffs. That's how I see it.
I tend to agree with you. I think LAFC are going to be 1 or 2 in the conference. They're just so reliable. The Galaxy strike me as more of a 4th, 5th, 6th place team this season. I think they're going to figure it out, but they need Puig to come back.
Yeah, for right now, yeah.
And then I think the San Diego FC might finish as high as maybe 7th in the West. They looked really solid. They have a couple kind of dark horse MVP or newcomer of the year candidates, and Chucky Lozano, obviously, and also Anders Dreyer from Denmark, who had 2 goals in that opener against the Galaxy. But we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to break down USC football's strong recruiting, the NFL Combine, and a new change to Major League Baseball.
welcome back to the Water Cooler. I'm now joined alongside MJ Newsom and Kyle Frankel. Let's start off the second half of our show with some USC football chatter, and hopefully I don't get yelled at this time. The Trojans are off to a strong start to the 2026 recruiting cycle, currently sitting with the #1 class in the country according to 24/7 Sports. The Trojans even flipped top 100 recruit Jonas Williams from Oregon in the past week. And we talked about the hiring of Chad Bowden previously on the show. What a start he's already had to building a championship roster for the Trojans.
Here we go. I mean, this is the kind of offseason I feel like USC seems to have basically every single offseason. It starts with some good momentum, and then maybe it dwindles down, maybe it keeps going, but all of a sudden Lincoln Riley keeps going. And I really believe that USC is headed in the right direction. You just got to put the product on the field. I know we're going to get there in a second. And I don't know if you guys listen to Josh Pate's podcast. Pate's saying, I love Josh Pate. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, and so is he. He said USC right now has the right people in the building, and I think he's right. You mentioned the hiring of Chad Bowden. You have great coordinators in Danson Lynn, good position coaches. You're starting to get the resources there. Just got to get the product on the field to complete it full circle.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think, as you said with the staff, the big difference for me, that's Rob Ryan. I see that guy around all the time. I feel like I see him weekly. He rocks. But,
do you ever talk to him?
No, I haven't talked to him. He's got a guy that's following him around all the time that I'm kind of scared of. But anyway, but yeah, like you said, it is a great start. And this is kind of the offseason USC tends to have every year. And we kind of all convince ourselves by the time the season starts that this team, this could be a top team in the country. But I think this one does feel a little different. It might just be because it's the Big Ten and it's bigger stakes now. But this one feels like this season was so disappointing, and the way that USC lost those games was so disappointing that to come out and have this make your mark in the recruiting cycle like this, I think does make a statement about this staff and how well respected they are throughout the sport.
I think even though Jonas Williams wasn't the highest rated recruit on the board for USC, they have Xavier Griffin, RJ Sermons who are above him, but they flipped Williams from Oregon. And Oregon, in the past couple of years, have been the flippers. They've flipped the recruits from USC, and just taking a look at a couple of his highlights. How did the Trojans get him when the Ducks have all of this money? They have the better on-field product. I think that's what the big difference is for USC. I mean, he's from Illinois. They're not like trying to go to Georgia like they were in the last recruiting cycle. I do think it's different this year. I mean, we say it every offseason, but in my head, I truly believe this one is slightly different. But the question is, USC has to perform on the field to actually sign the #1 recruiting class. Like, what ballpark of a record do you think the Trojans need on the field to sign all of these guys and continue to get more pieces?
I think your target number is going to be 8 this year. And I think
only 8?
But here's the thing. I understand 9+ is best.
Yeah.
But if you look at the schedule, it's tough. I mean, you got to go play. Is Oregon on the road or at home?
It's on the road.
Yeah, you play Oregon. You play at Notre Dame. You play Michigan. It's a very tough schedule. So, like, I'm not saying you can't win these games, but you got to be realistic. You need to start seeing some trajectory. And right now, trajectory is getting to 8 wins because the last couple of seasons you haven't been good. But I do think 9+ wins is key. I think 8 is the target number, not just for recruiting success, but I think for Lincoln Riley's job.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley's on the hot seat for sure. And I do agree with you. I think 8's like the bare minimum, but I think it's less about the games, the amount of games that you win, and more about how you win those games. Because this year it was a couple signature wins, and then it was just wilting late. All those losses late in the fourth quarter, like the vibe of this season was so down. And so I think next year it's not just about getting to 8 wins. It's about you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. You have to beat Maryland. You can't fall apart late against Minnesota. You got to finish that game and then pick up some signature wins by finishing that game at Michigan and really having both those signature wins, but also just having a clean season and having a product on the field, like you said, with Oregon that makes fans proud and that fans are excited about, whereas this year it was ugly.
Well, I always like going back to the old adage, and I've said it before on the show, you got to lose big before you can lose small. Then you got to lose small before you can win small. You got to win small before you can win big. I think last season was the lose small for USC. Hopefully they can then win small, but a little bit rapid fire. Which uncommitted players would you like the Trojans to pick up? And I do mean rapid fire in this case.
Mark Bowman, California guy, #1 tight end. He's modern day. Got to get him.
Yeah, I had Mark Bowman as well. Tristan Keys, another California guy. Actually, he's from Mississippi. He's not from me, but wide receiver, big receiver in the class. Got to pair guys with Jonas Williams.
I agree. And I am just going to throw the stat out before we move on. So the Trojans had a really good start to the last cycle, and they had the number 1 class, or top 5 class at some point. But they got so many decommits that their decommitted class would have finished number 13 in the country last year. And the Trojans finished number 14 in the country last year, mind you. So
good stat.
It's
a great stat.
It's kind of really tough. They lost so many players that they would have had the number 13 class in the country. But we've talked about high school recruiting, so why not? Let's talk about NFL recruiting. The NFL Combine started yesterday, but there's more discussion about who's not there rather than who is in Indianapolis. Players like Shedeur Sanders and Ashton Jeanty have opted out of the Combine. What do you guys make of their decisions to not compete? Not even compete, not perform at the Combine.
Yeah, they're not competing. They're not going out there. And here's my thing. I don't like it, but I understand it. And this day and age, I know these guys are now professionals. They're still kind of college players because they were there. But there's too much entitlement. 10 years ago, this never would have happened. I blame Leonard Fournette for all the opt-out antics. I mean, he was the first guy to opt out of a bowl game, and now all of a sudden, people want to opt out of bowl games. People want to get paid X million. People don't want to perform in the NFL Combine.
You're blaming one player
Yes.
for all
Yes.
that? You're blaming one player for NIL? You're blaming one?
Yes, this is a
Leonard
discussion for later.
Fournette started
We'll talk
the
about this
Supermax.
later. But here's my thing. I understand guys like Shedeur, guys like Jeanty, guys like Cam Ward are not going to perform because they don't have much else to prove. Guys who need to prove something will go to the Combine. I just don't like the opt-out. I think it should be a thing. You go to the Combine and you perform.
Yeah, I never knew I never knew it all started with sit out Lenny, but I agree with you. Like, I don't like it, but I completely get it. And let's not like pretend like the Combine is still about the Combine. The Combine is about all the agents and all the coaches and all the scouts in the NFL world going and schmoozing over drinks every night and spreading rumors to each other. That's what the Combine's about. That's why we care about the Combine. Like, nobody really cares what's happening on the field. So, again, I don't blame these guys. If you got nothing left to show and there's so much money on the line, and the way the culture is around the sport now, like, I would do it too if I was going to be a surefire top 5 pick.
I get it, like, especially for quarterbacks who are then having to throw to wide receivers who they've never met before. That's what makes sense to me because they still have their pro days and they throw to receivers who they're used to. It makes a lot of sense to me. But let's talk about now the players who are at the Combine. Who needs a big week to move up draft boards?
I got a guy that I know MJ is going to love, Jalen Milroe, QB, Alabama. Now, this guy, he was made for the Combine. He was built in a lab just to be at the Combine and to not be good at football. Because he's not that good at football, but he's going to be sick at the Combine. He's going to run a super good 40 time. He's so fast. Rushed for 20 touchdowns this season as a QB. And his only other strength as a quarterback is just throwing the deep ball. He just throws the deep ball. The Combine, there's a clip every year of a guy throwing a sick deep ball. He's going to be Zach Wilson. He's going to throw a sick deep ball, and he's going to be fast. And one GM is going to convince themselves that they can mold him into Lamar, and they won't. He'll suck, but he's going to have a good week, and he'll get picked early second. Someone will fly on him, and it's going to be bad. But yeah.
Yeah, so I wish the best to Jalen Milroe. I'm going to talk about another quarterback who really can't throw all that well, but is a proven winner and a really good leader, and that's Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard this season sold me on himself. I mean, he took Notre Dame after a loss to Northern Illinois and took them to the promised land. And it felt like Notre Dame was the wagon this season. You know, it felt like everyone got on Notre Dame's back and wanted to ride them to the finish line. It was that kind of team, and I think it was because of Riley Leonard. He's a proven winner. He works hard, but he's not your typical quarterback. He's sort of Tim Tebow-ish, like a less version of Tim Tebow, because Tebow is, in my opinion, greatest college football player of all time. Like I said, discussion for another time. But Leonard really needs to prove that he can beat people with his arm. He had 8 games under 200 passing yards this year. And, that's not exactly great. I think any game under 250 is not considered awesome in college football. He had one of those, and that was the national championship against Ohio State. So I think Leonard is a leader. He's a winner. He just has to prove himself that he can be a better passer to succeed at the next level.
All right, well, before we move on to one of our last topics, what do y'all think your 40-yard dash time would be at the Combine?
Pretty bad. I got sneaky wheels. I'd probably run. My goal would be 5. A 5 I'd be cool with.
About to say, for me, sub 5 would be pretty sick.
Yeah.
I'd want a 4.9.
Yeah.
No, you
like
wouldn't.
something around that.
Did you guys see what Isaiah Bond said? He said, I'm going to go out there and break the record. He said, I'm going to run a 4-1.
He's not going to run a
Alright,
4-1.
cool.
He's not going to run a 4-1.
But you know what? I think we've been too cordial this episode. So let's get into it, guys.
here we go.
It's time for the great debate. I'm excited. This is going to be a good one because Major League Baseball has tried out the automated balls and strike challenge system in spring training, a system which has been in place in minor league baseball for the past couple of years. While umpires still call balls and strikes, players can challenge that with a simple tap on the head. It's a pretty clean system, only taking seconds to review the call. Do you think this would be a good addition to Major League Baseball in the regular season and obviously the postseason?
Hate it.
Why?
And I'm not going to be like I'm not just going to be the traditionalist guy who's like, oh, the umpires make baseball. But like part of baseball is like scouting your umps, knowing which umps have a big zone. This guy's got a high zone. This guy likes to call him outside. And the catchers, this is just going to, once we do this, we're opening the floodgates for robot umps and all the tech, and then the catchers are just going to become irrelevant. There's no point in framing anymore.
Do you want to see Angel Hernandez making horrible calls?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Because they're hilarious sometimes.
Yeah,
when you
but
get,
they're
when you
hilarious,
get
but-
one bad call mixed in like every 2 weeks,
Okay.
baseball season's long, dog days the summer, you'll love that clip where they blow a call.
Let's say your
You'll
New
love
York
that
Mets,
clip.
your New York Mets are in the World Series and somehow
Well,
Angel Hernandez
yeah, I don't
gets
want
a
it.
game.
Well, he's not going to be doing the World Series.
Obviously
but yeah,
not.
I don't want it in the World Series. But if it's a day game in July and he blows a call, that would be kind of funny.
But like, I don't know. I feel like if you're okay with it in the bad games, like
I just think the times. Yes, he has some hilariously bad ones. But like, if you look at the actual accuracy of these guys, they're super accurate. Like they're not missing many calls, and it's so few, and it's just the ones that we pick out, and it's just I just don't want to eliminate the aspect of framing and of knowing your umps. I just think it's part of baseball.
They're still calling balls and strikes though. Like it's a challenge.
Yeah, they
system.
are, but then they get like exposed by an
Yeah,
whatever
it's
the
funny.
soccer
It's
on the
funny
camera.
while you're there,
and
it's
it's like a millimeter outside of the zone, and they're like, "That's a ball."
Well, it's funny when like catchers like call it and then it's like 5 inches outside. That's
Yeah,
even funny.
Those ones are funny too. Yeah. I care about it more from I think it opens the door for other stuff I don't want.
Okay, I will admit that I don't want robot umps either. I really do like the challenge system because I worked for a minor league team a couple years back. They use the ABS system, and it's so clean. What they do at AAA, at least, is it's the 5 days are the challenge system, and 2 days are just ABS. So the umpires don't even call balls and strikes. But the other 5 days, it's a challenge system. It's fun. You get like 3 per game. If 3, I think, wrong things per game. I enjoy it. I really like it. MJ, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was looking for some popcorn, didn't get any when I was watching you guys. I'm not going to be as passionate as you, but I do agree with you. I think I don't
appreciate
necessarily
that.
love it. I think part of the reason sports are great is because they're not perfect. And I
Yeah.
think this adds a layer to perfection that sports don't need. I think, the beauty of sports are the bad calls, the missed opportunities, the turnovers. Like those things make the game exciting. And I think if you take out the ability to have a bad call, the catcher's framing, it just eliminates some fan excitement. It lowers the stakes of the game sometimes. I'm not going to, this may be a bad reference, but when I used to play MLB The Show, I would make sure the setting was on for where the umpires could call balls in the zone or strikes
I do
outside
that
the zone.
too.
Like
I do
that
that
to me
too.
is a little bit more fun. I like I don't know what's going to happen, and that's great. That's why
Getting
sports are awesome.
squeezed by an ump. Rocks.
Absolutely.
Okay, all I'm going to say, like, I know replay review in other sports are different just because it can be somewhat subjective on the call, and balls and strikes are very objective. You have a zone. If it's in the zone, it's in the zone. But, like, we see that in tennis. Like, tennis has that replay system where it's, did it hit the line? Did it not hit the line? Is it in or out?
Yeah, but that's tennis though. Like we're talking baseball. Like
Yeah,
tennis.
what's the difference?
Yeah, but tennis your opponent calls whether or not you're in or out. Like it's a completely different thing.
I don't know. I enjoy it because it's a challenge system. It's like they're not going to call every bad call, especially if they're out of challenges. I really enjoy it. I've seen it firsthand. I really do think it's going to help the game. I want them to implement it. But it is rivalry week for USC women's basketball. It was reunion week for Luka Doncic. It's time for final memos. The Lakers faced off against the Mavericks with Doncic recording 19 points, 15 rebounds and 12 assists for a triple-double against his former team. Do we think the Mavericks miss Doncic yet?
Probably not. I think they're doing fine.
Yeah, with an injured Anthony Davis.
Yeah, everybody looked so happy on that game for sure on the Mavericks bench. They all just looked so giddy to be there. So they're definitely doing fine.
The Mavs are definitely gonna miss Doncic. Did you guys see the picture of Luka? I must have hit a shot or whatever, staring down Mika Harrison in the crowd. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
it's
incredible.
bad.
Like, if I'm Luka Doncic, I know here's the thing. He didn't put up just gaudy point stats to me, but a triple-double. When they go to Dallas, take homeboys over. I mean, he's going to score 40-plus points that game.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, dude, he's going to go nuts.
I mean, like,
He's out for
Probably.
blood.
Yeah, he
is. Dude, the way they traded him, it was bad. It was really bad.
It almost seems he is on a minutes restriction. I was at the Lakers game yesterday, and he didn't play much of the second.
I don't think he's
part
playing much
of the first
tonight
quarter.
either.
Yeah, exactly.
He's coming back from an injury, and he's still getting gelled in with this new team. Tell me, when it comes to April, he's going to be balling.
Okay, in April, yeah. I can.
You know,
agree with
give him
that.
a little bit of time to gel. Also, it's still LeBron's team.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to push the goat
ugh.
agenda, but LeBron is 40 years old and still doing what he's doing. LeBron's him, dude.
Wow. Hey, well, we made it through a show without an MJ Alabama reference. Kyle, you ruined it for us.
Bama. Roll
You
Tide.
mentioned Bama.
Roll
but
Tide.
That's all the time we have today. For our entire cast and crew, I'm Thomas Johnson, and we will see you next time on The Water Cooler.